Millionaire lied to his pregnant wife about work. He was in a hotel with his mistress. They say a single lie can unravel an entire life, and for billionaire hedge fund manager Nicholas Hartford, those words would soon hit terrifyingly close to home. As rumors swirled about his mysterious absences and cryptic late-night texts, no one, not even his devoted pregnant wife, Serena, could have predicted the seismic betrayal about to surface. Behind closed doors of five-star hotels and the velvet hush of clandestine dinners, Nicholas cultivated a dark secret, a mistress he had meticulously hidden from prying eyes. Yet secrets rarely stay buried. When fate begins to align against him, Nicholas will discover that even the richest man can't buy redemption. Nicholas Hartford was widely acknowledged as one of the wealthiest hedge fund managers in New York City. Born into a middle-class family, he had climbed the financial ladder with a blend of sharp instincts and relentless ambition. His track record boasted successful partnerships with globally renowned investors, including a brief encounter with Sir Richard Branson years ago at a charity gala, an anecdote Nicholas never missed an opportunity to share. Although he wasn't as famous as Branson, Nicholas's name carried weight among the elite, and his net worth soared into 8, then 9 figures. His wife, Serena Montgomery Hartford, was equally distinguished in her field. A celebrated art historian and gallery owner, Serena had studied in Paris, curated exhibitions in London, and traveled through Rome in search of hidden masterpieces. They met at a high society fundraiser in Manhattan, both dazzled by each other's brilliance. Friends whispered they were a match made in heaven, an alpha couple that would shape the city's cultural and financial future. From the outside, Nicholas and Serena's life sparkled. They hosted lavish dinner parties, where the wine flowed freely and live chamber music wafted through their penthouse overlooking Central Park. Walls were adorned with artwork from new, undiscovered painters that Serena championed, each piece a testament to her discerning eye. Meanwhile, Nicholas brought together the city's top financiers, forging deals that seemed to multiply their fortune overnight. When they discovered Serena was pregnant, the news spread rapidly through their social circles. The baby was hailed as an heir to both an artistic and financial empire. Gossip columnists speculated about the elaborate baby shower to come, who would be godparents, and whether Serena would pass on her refined artistic sensibilities or Nicholas's unmatched hustle. Their penthouse phone rang off the hook with congratulations. Flower deliveries arrived daily, piling in the lobby to the doorman's bewilderment. Yet beneath the glossy surface of wealth and ambition lay the first fissures. Nicholas's work schedule grew more erratic. He claimed he was diversifying his hedge fund's portfolio, requiring unexpected travel to Hong Kong or Geneva. He left at odd hours, returning days or weeks later, always with an explanation that didn't quite add up. Often, he blamed the volatile international markets for urgent flights or extended business dinners. Serena, initially occupied with her gallery's expansion and the onset of pregnancy fatigue, found it easy to accept his explanations. She had long prided herself on supporting Nicholas's drive, but the glimmer in Nicholas's eyes had changed. He seemed perpetually distracted, frequently checking his phone during quiet evenings and stepping away with the faintest grin. Serena wondered if the baby's impending arrival had unsettled him. He'd once told her children made him nervous because he hadn't grown up with close siblings, and he worried he wouldn't know how to be a good father. Time passed, and the whispers in Serena's mind grew louder. She dismissed them as pregnancy hormones. After all, a man who had soared from the middle class to the top rung of society was bound to handle stress differently than others. And love, she reminded herself, had always been their guiding star, their fortress in a tumultuous world of money and power. But illusions only last so long, and Serena, ever the perceptive art historian, was about to discover the harrowing truth hidden beneath the glossy veneer of her marriage. It started with the smallest detail, a receipt. One Sunday morning, Serena was clearing out Nicholas's pockets before sending his suits to the dry cleaner. Among the usual business cards and tiny notepads, she found a receipt for a luxury boutique hotel in Soho, a place known for its discreet services and celebrity clientele. Curiously, the date on the receipt did not coincide with any of Nicholas's supposed business trips. He claimed to have been in Chicago at the time, overseeing an urgent deal with a pharmaceuticals company. Holding the slip of paper between her manicured fingers, Serena felt her heart give a jolt. Could Nicholas have had a meeting in Soho without telling her? It wasn't impossible, but given the date, it felt suspiciously off. Instead of confronting him immediately, she slipped the receipt into her purse, determined to stay calm. If she learned anything from her art investigations, it was the importance of collecting more evidence before drawing conclusions. That evening, Nicholas returned home late. He claimed a client meeting had run overtime. Then he wanted to shower and collapse into bed without so much as a goodnight kiss. Serena lay awake, the baby kicking gently in her womb, the hush of the penthouse amplifying her thoughts. She weighed the possibilities, constructing different scenarios in her mind. None of them offered relief. Another clue emerged when Nicholas's phone buzzed with a text message around midnight. Normally, Serena wasn't the type to pry, but the phone screen lit the dark bedroom like a beacon. She couldn't ignore it. The message preview displayed a woman's name, Ava. The snippet read, "Can't wait to see you again." Serena's breath caught. Could Ava be a potential client or collaborator? Nicholas's world was filled with influential people, many of whom were women. Yet the timing midnight suggested this was not a standard business conversation. Nicholas stirred and hastily grabbed his phone off the nightstand. He glanced at the screen, tension sketched across his face, and turned away as though hoping she hadn't noticed. Serena's mind raced. Over the next week, she carefully observed him, the hushed phone calls, the way he would abruptly step out of the room to speak in private, the unspoken tension in his posture whenever his phone vibrated. At her gallery, she struggled to focus on the upcoming exhibit. Meanwhile, her assistant, Gabriella, noticed Serena's fretful aura. Gabriella gently asked if Serena was feeling well. Serena forced a smile and blamed pregnancy-induced exhaustion. Late one night, unable to sleep, Serena tiptoed into Nicholas's study. She found his laptop open. Her anxiety soared. She had never violated his privacy like this, but the swirl of suspicion had grown too powerful to ignore. She navigated to the email search bar, typed in Ava, and waited for a result. To her shock, numerous emails popped up. One subject line read, "Hotel booking confirmed Friday night." Another, "Miss you." Her heart hammered as she clicked. The email details were painfully explicit. Ava wrote about longing for his touch, about counting the hours until she could see him again. In an instant, Serena felt her world crumble. Anger, betrayal, confusion, these emotions hit her like a storm. She retreated from the study, gripping her belly as if to shield the baby from the onslaught of pain. In her mind, questions erupted. How long had this been going on? Who was this Ava? And how did Nicholas even meet her? Had everything about their perfect life been a facade? Before she could compose herself, Nicholas's footsteps echoed down the hallway. She quickly closed the browser, cursing her impulsiveness. If he found her snooping, he would have a chance to spin more lies. She wanted more time, more evidence enough to confront him without any opportunity for him to wriggle free. There had to be a strategy, a plan, and so she quietly returned to bed, the child stirring restlessly in her womb. Even then, she knew the truth had to come out. But the question remained. Would she have the strength to confront him, or would the devastation of betrayal prove too great? The next morning, Nicholas announced He had an urgent meeting downtown. He left the penthouse at 7, barely touching the breakfast Serena had laid out. Normally, Serena would have kissed him on the cheek and wished him luck, but this time she just watched him go, the pit in her stomach growing heavier. Shortly afterward, Serena made a decision. She would learn everything she could about Ava. If she was going to confront Nicholas, she needed the facts at her disposal. She dialed her friend Clara, a private investigator who had helped the gallery authenticate rare paintings in the past. Clara was discreet, resourceful, and owed Serena a favor after a successful job that ended in a significant commission bonus. "Serena," Clara greeted in a hushed tone. "I owe you big time for that last job, anything you need." Serena's voice trembled. "I need you to find out who Ava is, where she lives, what she does, anything you can get, and I need it fast." Clara asked no questions, only demanded details. With the skill of a detective, she set to work. Over the next few days, she trailed Nicholas when he claimed he was traveling on business. She discovered he checked into the Solstice Hotel, a luxurious, discreet venue in Soho, the same name Serena had spotted on that damning receipt. The reservation was under an alias, but the credit card linked to Nicholas's business account gave him away. Clara's surveillance confirmed that Ava was no client or colleague. She was a marketing consultant from Los Angeles, in her late 20s. Her social media showed a glamorous lifestyle: beaches in the Bahamas, cocktails in rooftop lounges, high-end shopping. In photos, she wore clothes that flattered her petite yet curvaceous figure, her dark blonde hair always styled to perfection. Strangely, there were subtle hints of finance luxury, like a brand new sports car in one photo, then an extravagant trip to Europe in another, far beyond what a freelance marketing consultant might typically afford. Serena's heartbreak soared. Nicholas was obviously funding Ava's extravagant life. Worse, he was doing it behind Serena's back, siphoning off money from accounts that Serena had meticulously helped grow and manage. Part of Serena wanted to barge into that Soho hotel room and drag her husband out by the collar, demanding an explanation. Another part trembled at the thought of a public scene, especially in her current delicate condition. She was pregnant, vulnerable, and the stress threatened to overwhelm her. A few days later, Clara called with another update. "Serena," she said, "I followed Nicholas. He was with Ava again last night. They were at the hotel bar, then disappeared upstairs." I tried to snap a few pictures from a discreet angle. Serena stared at the photos Clara emailed. Nicholas in an intimate conversation with a stunning blonde, smiles brimming with barely contained desire. The next photo showed them stepping into an elevator, arms around each other's waist like star-crossed lovers in a romance film. Tears stung Serena's eyes, but fury pooled in her heart. She refused to be a passive victim. She decided to confront Nicholas, but not yet. She wanted to time it perfectly, to unleash her knowledge at the point of maximum impact. Perhaps she wanted him to feel the depth of betrayal she was forced to endure, or maybe she just wanted clarity for the days and weeks of confusion. In the meantime, she had the presence of mind to schedule a doctor's appointment for her pregnancy checkup. She needed to ensure her health and the baby's, despite the emotional turmoil. Dr. Patel, sensing her distress, asked if she was experiencing unusual stress. Serena, biting her lip, admitted she was under immense pressure at work. She had no desire to elaborate. A flicker of concern passed through Dr. Patel's eyes, but she said nothing beyond cautioning Serena to rest, eat well, and keep her blood pressure in check. Even as Serena wrestled with heartbreak, she felt an emerging sense of resolution. She would not let Nicholas's betrayal destroy her or her child's future. But how she would confront him and what would come after remained a question as vast as the star-flecked sky. Days turned into a slow, throbbing ache. Whenever Nicholas entered a room, Serena felt a mixture of revulsion and longing. She recalled the early days of their romance cocktails on the rooftop of the Met, stolen kisses during galas, long walks in Central Park. How could the man she'd adored, who had promised to be her partner in every sense, stoop to such betrayal? One evening, Nicholas returned from yet another suspicious meeting. He carried a faint scent of expensive perfume, one that Serena recognized from a night she'd trailed behind Ava and Nicholas through a hotel lobby, adrenaline pounding in her ears. That same perfume clung to Nicholas's suit jacket, now like a mocking reminder of his deceit. Serena's pulse thundered as she glanced at him across the penthouse living room. Nicholas seemed uneasy, as if he sensed her scrutiny. His eyes darted to the closed laptop on the table. Serena had been reviewing the gallery's finances, her newfound sense of caution prompting her to check whether Nicholas was funneling money elsewhere. "You're up late," Nicholas muttered. Serena offered a humorless smile. "Work never stops. You know how it is." Their conversation was stilted. Nicholas poured himself a whiskey and sank into the sofa. Serena sat across from him, her features taut. She couldn't bear to play this charade any longer. The tension crackled, thick and tangible. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling. "Nicholas, are you having an affair?" He froze, whiskey glass in midair. A range of emotions flickered across his face: shock, then a guarded wariness. "Why would you ask that?" "Because I'm not blind," she replied, her tone sharper than she intended. "I've seen your receipts, your hotel bookings. I've seen messages on your phone. Tell me the truth." Nicholas slammed the glass down on the coffee table, whiskey sloshing over the rim. "You went through my phone? I saw the notifications pop up," Serena said, refusing to back down. "And I'm telling you, I know about Ava. I know everything, Nicholas. Don't you dare deny it." For a moment, Nicholas looked like he might fight it, might weave another lie. But he read the resolve in her eyes and realized it was pointless. His shoulders slumped. "I can explain," he murmured, voice thick with guilt. Serena let out a brittle laugh. "Explain what? That you've been sleeping with some woman while I carry your child?" "I never wanted to hurt you," Nicholas began, but Serena cut him off with a razor-sharp glare. "Don't you dare patronize me," she hissed. "You think throwing money at me, hosting fancy parties, and giving me the life you think I deserve would keep me ignorant?" Tears glistened in her eyes, but she blinked them away, refusing to let them fall. Nicholas ran a hand through his hair, face taut. "I'm so sorry, Serena. I didn't plan for this to happen. It just happened." Serena's heart pounded. She rose from her seat, feeling fury course through her. "Nothing just happens, Nicholas. You made choices. Repeatedly. And you lied, not just to me, but to the family we're building." His eyes flickered to her growing belly. "I never wanted to jeopardize the baby. I swear I..." "Stop talking," she said, voice trembling. "I can't stand to look at you right now. Get out of here. Go stay at your hotel with your mistress if you must." He stared at her, torn between outrage and remorse. But the look in her eyes left no room for negotiation. Guilt etched lines across his face as he grabbed his coat, walked to the elevator, and disappeared. The door slid shut with a hollow thud, and in that moment, Serena felt as though her entire world had collapsed. Hot tears streamed down her face, and she cradled her belly protectively. The night stretched on in a silence thick with heartbreak. Yet for all her sorrow, a small spark of anger and resolve kept her upright. This was far from over. Once Nicholas left, Serena did something she had never done before. She reached for a bottle of sedative medication her doctor had prescribed in case of severe stress during pregnancy. She took a half dose to calm her racing heart and quell the headache pulsing at her temples. She knew she couldn't afford to spiral into panic. The baby depended on her stability. In the morning, she woke to a barrage of text messages from Nicholas. Apologies, pleas, half-hearted justifications. She ignored them. The only person she wanted to speak to was Clara, the private investigator. Without skipping breakfast, she called Clara and asked her to delve deeper. I need to know exactly how long this has been going on and whether there's anything illegal about the funds he's using. If he's paying for Ava's lifestyle out of my accounts, I want to know. Clara promised to do her best, but cautioned Serena, this could get very messy. If you find anything that indicates financial impropriety, money laundering, offshore accounts, you'll be in a war with him. Serena's voice hardened. I don't care. This is my life, my child's future. I won't let him get away with this. Later that day, Serena found herself in her gallery, preparing for a major exhibition of Latin American contemporary art. Standing amid the vibrant canvases, she felt her tension ease slightly. Art had always been her refuge, a gateway into worlds that transcended life's betrayals. Yet, the brief solace she found among the paintings was shattered when she checked her phone again. Unknown number, I'm sorry about everything. Nicholas told me you found out Ava. Serena's blood turned cold. The audacity of this woman to reach out, as though they could have a civil conversation about the deception. She clenched her phone, furious. Before she could stop herself, she typed a curt reply. Never contact me again. Moments later, another text. I didn't mean for it to happen this way. I truly care about Nicholas. I hope we can talk one day. Serena's hand shook. The phone felt like a viper in her palm, delivering venom. She blocked the number. If Ava thought they could somehow be cordial, she was delusional. Back in her office, Serena struggled to focus on the mundane tasks of approving the exhibit's catalogues and sending invites to VIPs. A staff member knocked softly, telling her a client had arrived to discuss a potential purchase. Serena forced herself to smile and greet the client, thankful for any distraction from the nightmare that was her personal life. Yet her mind still churned. If Nicholas was funneling money into his mistress's accounts, it could jeopardize the carefully balanced finances of their marriage. They had prenuptial agreements, business entanglements, and real estate investments. The more Serena thought about it, the more she realized this affair could spell disaster on multiple fronts: legal, financial, emotional. That evening, after the gallery closed, Serena grabbed a takeout meal and returned to the penthouse, half expecting Nicholas to be waiting, but it was empty. She felt an uncomfortable mix of relief and loneliness. Had he gone to Ava's again? A pang of regret struck her. Despite his betrayal, she still wanted to believe in the man she thought she married. As midnight approached, she sat at her desk, reviewing bank statements and investment logs. She prayed there was no evidence of serious wrongdoing, because if Nicholas had risked not only her heart but their fortune on his fling, she would have no choice but to wage a war for herself, for her unborn child. And so, under the dim glow of a desk lamp, Serena braced herself for the possibility that her entire life, her marriage, her finances, her child's future might hang in the balance of a secret ledger. Over the next few days, Clara delivered an ever-growing trove of documents and information. Nicholas had created a shell company to mask certain transactions. Large sums of money were being funneled from the Hartford-Montgomery investment portfolio into Ava's personal accounts. In one case, a suspicious sum had been routed to an upscale realtor in Los Angeles, presumably for Ava's luxury condo. When Serena saw the evidence, her hands trembled. She had known Nicholas was wealthy, but the sums he was burning on Ava exceeded imagination. Properties, a lavish car, even rumors of a trust fund in her name. Through it all, Nicholas had lied to Serena's face, using the veneer of complex hedge fund deals to justify the missing money. Clara's voice was grave. This is more than an affair, Serena. It's embezzlement. He's diverting funds that belong partly to you. If this gets out, it could ruin his reputation, not to mention potential legal implications. Serena's jaw tightened. He's ruined everything already. I won't let him take another penny. As if on cue, Serena's phone rang. It was Nicholas. For a moment, she debated ignoring it, but a surge of anger prompted her to pick up. "What do you want?" His tone was subdued, almost pleading. "I want to come home. Can we talk?" Serena inhaled slowly, remembering her baby's presence. Stress was dangerous, so was confrontation. Yet she agreed, setting a time for him to come by the penthouse. After she ended the call, she braced herself, eyes skimming across the damning documents once more. The swirl of betrayal, anger, and heartbreak threatened to swallow her whole. That evening, Nicholas arrived, dressed in a fitted suit, dark circles beneath his eyes. He looked older, more worn, as if the weight of his duplicity had taken a physical toll. Serena watched him step inside, noticing how he tensed when he glimpsed the papers on the coffee table. "I see you've been busy," he murmured, setting his briefcase down. Serena's voice shook with quiet fury. "You've been funneling our money into your mistress's pockets. You think I wouldn't find out?" Nicholas swallowed. "It's complicated. I needed to keep her quiet. She threatened to expose our affair to the press if I didn't help her financially." Serena's eyes flashed. "You're blaming her? You chose to sleep with her, to keep it hidden. You made a deal with the devil, Nicholas. And now you're trying to drag me into this." He sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. "I never meant for any of this to happen. I was weak. And she came into my life at a low point." She stared at him, incredulous. "A low point? Do you realize how twisted that sounds, coming from you, a man with everything? A pregnant wife, a fortune, a place at the top of society? And you still weren't satisfied?" Nicholas exhaled, voice ragged. "I was terrified about becoming a father, about failing you and the baby." She was a distraction, a way to escape. Serena's rage burned. "You are a coward, Nicholas. A father who can't handle fatherhood, a husband who runs at the slightest challenge." She paused, then lowered her voice. "I have every right to divorce you and go public with what you've done. You realize that?" He nodded, eyes glistening with tears. "If you did that, I'd lose everything. My reputation, my partnerships. I'd be ruined." Serena lifted her chin. "Would you blame me if I did? Look at these documents. This is fraud, at the very least." His voice caught. "I know. I messed up. Serena, I'll do anything to fix this. Anything." A part of her wanted to laugh bitterly. Could this broken trust be fixed by money or apologies? She hugged her belly, as though shielding the baby from his presence. "I need time to think," she said quietly. "You can stay here, but only in the guest room. Don't come near me unless I call for you." Nicholas nodded, eyes downcast. He picked up his briefcase and retreated. As he disappeared down the hall, Serena felt both relief and a wave of sorrow. She'd loved him once, deeply. Now, she had to steel herself for the storm that was surely coming. While Serena and Nicholas maintained a frosty coexistence under the same roof, Ava was busy plotting her next move. After Serena blocked her phone number, Ava resorted to email. Messages filtered into Serena's inbox daily, each more desperate than the last. Ava claimed that Nicholas had used her, promising love and financial security. She wrote that she was pregnant too, though she offered no proof. She demanded continued financial support, threatening to leak everything to gossip, websites, and tabloids. When Serena read Ava's emails, she felt a mixture of revulsion and pity. Was Ava truly pregnant, or was it just another ploy to keep Nicholas on a leash? The thought of her child having a half-sibling with this manipulative woman churned her stomach. Yet she also recognized a truth. Ava held the power to destroy Nicholas's reputation with a single tabloid tip. The brand image Serena and Nicholas had cultivated would be torn to shreds, leaving a scandal in its wake. That night, Serena confronted Nicholas about Ava's threats. He had returned home late, looking haggard. When she demanded answers, he slumped in a chair, shoulders sagging. "Ava's blackmailing me," Nicholas admitted. the haunted look in his eyes returning. She's lying about being pregnant. I know it. She only wants more money. Serena rubbed her temples, feeling a migraine approach. Then call her bluff. Tell her you won't give her a dime unless she proves she's pregnant. Or better yet, have your lawyers send a cease and desist. It's not that simple, Nicholas sighed. She has photos, text messages, emails. If she releases them, my professional life is over. No board of investors will trust me again. Serena's fury flared. You should have thought of that before you started this affair. He stared at the floor, contrite. I know, but right now our future is hanging by a thread. If she goes public, it could drag you into the spotlight too. You'll be hounded by paparazzi. Our child will grow up in a scandal. Serena felt a cold fear coil inside her. Her unborn baby was innocent in all this. Yet if Ava escalated her threats, they could lose everything: privacy, financial stability, social standing. Even her beloved gallery might suffer from the scandal, scaring off donors and sponsors. She swallowed hard. We need a strategy. Is there any chance you can buy her silence one last time? Nicholas winced. I've already given her millions. If I keep feeding her demands, it'll never end. Serena exhaled, mind whirling. A thought occurred to her. What if we flip the script? Expose her blackmail attempt. Show the tabloids she's the one threatening you for money. Nicholas shook his head. She'll still release the affair details. It doesn't matter if she's blackmailing me or not. Once the scandal's out, it's out. Serena's eyes clouded with bitterness. This was the cage they found themselves in, trapped by Ava's threats, by Nicholas's betrayal. She turned away from him, unable to bear looking at his remorseful expression. We'll think of something, she muttered, though she felt far from certain. That night, Serena barely slept. The weight of impending disaster hung over her, and the baby's restless movements only heightened her anxiety. She tried to focus on the gallery's upcoming exhibition, the one bright spot in her life. But even art couldn't fully shield her from the avalanche of fear rolling toward her. If there was one solace, it was her unwavering determination. She had come too far in life, building a reputable gallery, forging relationships with international artists, securing her own financial independence, to let a cheating spouse and a manipulative mistress annihilate everything. She might have to fight tooth and nail, but she would protect her child's future at any cost. A few days later, as Serena was finalizing the exhibit, she received an unexpected visitor at the gallery, Adriana Cordero, a renowned art patron and collector who also moved in high society circles. Adriana was known for her discretion and connections that spanned from Manhattan's upper crust to European nobility. She had heard rumors that something was amiss in the Hartford household. Adriana approached Serena carefully. My dear, I sense you're under a great deal of stress. If you need a confidant, someone who can help navigate delicate matters, I'm here. Serena hesitated. She was too proud to spill her personal woes to an acquaintance. But Adriana's sympathetic gaze and impeccable track record of handling private affairs tempted her to open up. In a secluded corner of the gallery, Serena divulged the bare-bones version of the story: Nicholas's affair, the mistress's threats, the looming scandal. Adriana listened intently, her eyes sharp. When Serena finished, Adriana tapped her chin thoughtfully. You know, I've dealt with something similar in my family. My cousin was blackmailed by a jilted lover. We hired a legal and PR team to negotiate a quiet settlement and secure a confidentiality agreement. It was messy, but it worked. Serena frowned. Nicholas has tried paying her off, but Ava keeps demanding more. I worry an NDA won't hold if she's truly determined to destroy us. Adriana smiled faintly. You'd be surprised how effective an airtight NDA can be, especially if backed by the threat of severe legal consequences. But it must be done through the right channels. I can refer you to a top crisis management firm. Serena felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps there was a more elegant way out than public scandal or indefinite hush money. Thank you, Adriana. I appreciate it. Later that evening, Serena relayed Adriana's suggestions to Nicholas, who was still living in the guest room, his eyes lit with tentative optimism. That might be our best shot. Do you trust Adriana? She's never given me a reason not to, Serena replied. Her connections are legendary, and at this point, we have little to lose. So they arranged a meeting with the crisis management firm. The plan was simple: gather every incriminating piece of evidence Ava had, then offer her a one-time payment to relinquish everything and sign a comprehensive NDA. If she refused, they would drag her to court for extortion and blackmail, presenting the reams of evidence that Clara had gathered showing her repeated demands. It sounded straightforward on paper, but the emotional toll weighed on Serena. She was essentially negotiating her husband's affair on a business level, a final straw in the humiliations she'd endured. Yet she had no choice. Pride meant little if her child's future was jeopardized. The next few days were a flurry of conference calls and strategy sessions with lawyers. Nicholas handed over every text, email, and photo Ava had sent. In these discussions, Serena glimpsed the depths of Nicholas's betrayal in explicit detail photos of the two in bed, love notes, even a screenshot of a plane ticket to Paris he'd once booked for Ava. Each revelation stung like a fresh wound. Still, she kept her composure. With the crisis team at the helm, they prepared a robust legal threat, ensuring that if Ava so much as whispered about the affair, she'd face crippling financial penalties. Then they drafted a settlement offer. It was a substantial sum, enough to live comfortably for years. Nicholas wanted to argue for a lower amount, but Serena cut him off. "We're paying for our peace of mind. This is your mess. Own it." He gave her a tight nod, looking utterly defeated. And so, with a final flourish of signatures, they sent the proposal to Ava, awaiting her response with bated breath. Would she comply, or would she relish destroying Nicholas's life in the tabloids? As the hours ticked by, Serena couldn't help but feel a glimmer of relief. At least they were seizing control of the narrative, refusing to be victims. Whatever Ava decided, Serena vowed she would stand strong for herself, for her baby. She only hoped the next chapter of this ordeal wouldn't plunge them further into darkness. As if to mirror the uncertainty swirling in Serena's life, a summer storm raged outside the penthouse windows. Lightning illuminated the sky, and thunder reverberated through the walls. Serena paced the living room, glancing at her phone every few minutes. Nicholas was similarly on edge, hovering by the kitchen counter, phone in hand. They waited for a reply from AVA's lawyer, dreading the possible outcomes. Finally, late in the evening, Nicholas's phone pinged with an incoming email. He read it, exhaled sharply, then handed the phone to Serena. Ava had tentatively agreed to the settlement, contingent on a few adjustments. She wanted even more money, plus a written apology from Nicholas admitting he'd strung her along. Serena's anger flared. She wants a personal letter admitting everything? This woman has no shame. Nicholas's face paled. If I write that letter, she could leak it. Serena scrolled down to the fine print of the agreement. The NDA mandated that any breach on Ava's part would result in punitive damages, but the risk of public humiliation remained. Nicholas's confession could be the final nail in his coffin if it ever found its way into the press. And yet, refusing might antagonize Ava enough to blow up the entire arrangement. The crisis management team advised them to comply, with strong legal verbiage reinforcing the confidentiality clause. After hours of tense debate, Nicholas wrote a carefully vetted apology, detailing his mistakes without providing any extraneous details. The lawyers insisted on vague language that couldn't double as a scandalous scoop if leaked. Then, with heavy hearts, Nicholas and Serena signed the revised agreement, effectively binding Ava to silence. When it was done, a hollow sense of relief settled over them. The storm continued to rage outside, as if reflecting the tumult within. Nicholas retreated to the guest room, and Serena lay in the master bedroom, eyes wide open, listening to the rain batter the windows. She wondered if this was truly the end of their ordeal, or just a lull before the next storm. Over the following days, no new demands from Ava arrived. The hush money was transferred, and the crisis management firm reported back that Ava had signed the final NDA. On paper, the affair was buried. In reality, Serena knew the damage was irreversible. Her heart felt like a shattered mirror, every shard reflecting a fragment of the trust she once had in Nicholas. A few nights later, Nicholas appeared at Serena's bedroom door, his face etched with sorrow. "Can we talk?" he asked softly. She nodded, stiffly. He sank onto the edge of the bed, hands clasped. "I'm so sorry, Serena. If I could erase my actions, I would. But I can't. All I can do is vow to be a better man for you and our child." She remained silent, tears burning her eyes. Part of her wanted to believe in second chances to salvage the marriage she had once cherished. Another part, wounded beyond measure, wanted him gone forever. "I know it'll take time," he continued, voice trembling, "but I swear I'll do whatever it takes to rebuild your trust. Therapy, counseling, stepping away from work, anything." Serena released a shuddering breath. "Nicholas, the first needs space. I can't just snap my fingers and pretend this never happened." His eyes glistened. "I understand, but please, let me try. For our baby." She stared at him, searching for any hint of the man she once loved. In his haggard features, she saw sincerity, regret, and a longing for redemption. Still, that might not be enough. "Therapy," she repeated dully. "Maybe that's a start." They lapsed into silence, the tension in the room thick. Finally, Nicholas stood, walking out with hunched shoulders. Serena clutched a pillow against her chest, tears finally spilling free. She was so tired of heartbreak, tired of betrayal, tired of the constant battle between love and anger. Unknown to both of them, fate had more twists in store. Weeks passed in a semblance of calm. Nicholas attended therapy sessions alone, and occasionally Serena joined him. Their conversations in the penthouse remained guarded, though slightly more civil. Serena, resolute in her independence, focused on her gallery's success. She also prioritized prenatal appointments, ensuring the baby remained healthy despite her emotional chaos. One afternoon, after an ultrasound session, Dr. Patel asked Serena to step into her office. The doctor's expression was gentle but serious. A flutter of anxiety gripped Serena's stomach. "Serena, doctor," Patel began, "the baby seems fine overall, but I have some concerns about your blood pressure and stress levels. It's crucial for you to rest. Chronic stress can lead to complications." Serena forced a tight smile. "I'm trying. My life's complicated at the moment." Dr. Patel nodded, not pressing further. "I understand. Just remember, your well-being directly affects your child. If things become overwhelming, consider stepping away from stressful environments." Serena headed home, Dr. Patel's words echoing in her mind. Could she muster the strength to forgive Nicholas for the sake of reducing stress, or would staying in a tense environment be more harmful than leaving? As she mulled over these dilemmas, a startling phone call interrupted her thoughts. The crisis management firm's lead attorney phoned with urgent news. "Serena, we've received word that Ava's in the hospital. We're not sure if it's serious, but it seems..." She collapsed. "The NDA is still binding, but we wanted you to be aware in case anything changes." Serena's heart pounded. She tried to quell the flicker of concern. Ava's well-being shouldn't matter to her after all the harm she'd caused. Yet empathy tugged at the corner of her heart. What if Ava truly was pregnant? What if there was a complication? Serena felt a pang of guilt, as though she had somehow contributed to this chain of events. That evening, Serena told Nicholas about Ava's hospitalization. He paled, panic flashing in his eyes. We should check on her, see if she's all right. Serena felt a surge of jealousy and resentment, but also recognized the humanity in his reaction. She pressed her lips together. Fine, if it'll give you closure, go. Just don't drag me into it. Nicholas nodded, hurriedly grabbing his coat. Serena watched him leave, a storm of emotions roiling within. Did he still care for Ava, or was this just a sense of obligation? With Nicholas gone, Serena found herself alone again, battling a fresh wave of insecurities. Hours later, Nicholas returned, looking drained. She had severe abdominal pain, he explained. But the doctors say it was a false alarm. She's stable. Serena's jaw tightened. Was she actually pregnant? They ran tests. She's not, Nicholas confirmed, relief evident in his voice. She lied about that too. A mixture of fury and relief welled in Serena. She stared at Nicholas, reading the guilt in his eyes. This is what you risked everything for? A woman who doesn't hesitate to lie and blackmail? Nicholas closed his eyes. I know. I was a fool. It struck Serena then how deeply entangled they all were in each other's mistakes. Ava's meltdown might be the final chapter, or just another turn in a saga of deception. Either way, Serena felt a bone-deep exhaustion settle over her. She wondered if there was any path forward that wouldn't leave her shattered. Despite Ava being out of their lives for now, the tension between Nicholas and Serena persisted like a lingering fog. They attended couples counseling, guided by a compassionate therapist, Dr. Lena Schaffer. Session by session, they peeled back layers of hurt and betrayal. Serena discovered that Nicholas's affair wasn't solely about lust or boredom. There were deep-seated fears of fatherhood and inadequacy. For Serena, the pain of betrayal cut into her sense of self-worth and trust. Though they made some progress, the path to reconciliation was fraught with obstacles. Serena couldn't simply forget the images of him with Ava, nor the financial improprieties. Nicholas, for his part, wrestled with self-loathing and desperation to regain her affection. Their therapy sessions were often punctuated by tears, shouts, and long, painful silences. Outside therapy, life continued. Serena's gallery launched the Latin American art exhibition to critical acclaim. She poured her energy into each event, mingling with influencers and art critics, forging new partnerships. To onlookers, she was poised and radiant, her pregnancy lending an extra glow. Behind that polished exterior, her heart felt fractured, only kept whole by her dedication to her unborn child. Nicholas, meanwhile, scaled back his hedge fund's operations. His partners, alarmed by his erratic behavior and rumored scandal, insisted he take a temporary leave. He reluctantly agreed, hoping space would quell suspicions. With more free time on his hands, he tried to support Serena at the gallery, but she rarely welcomed his presence. Their interactions remained wary, as though a single spark could ignite another conflagration. One evening, after a particularly tense therapy session, Serena found Nicholas in the nursery. It was half-finished soft pastel walls, a crib waiting to be assembled, plush toys scattered in unopened packages. He stood there, staring at the empty crib. She entered quietly. "What are you doing?" He turned, sadness in his eyes. "Trying to imagine our baby here, imagining a future where I haven't destroyed everything." Serena's heart clenched. "I don't know if I can ever fully trust you again." He nodded. "I accept that, but I'll never stop trying to earn it back." A heavy silence filled the room, broken only by the hum of the city lights outside. Serena folded her arms protectively across her belly. "You hurt me more than you can ever understand." Nicholas reached out, stopping short of touching her arm. "I know, but I also know we can't keep living like this. Either we find a way back to each other, or we part ways." She swallowed hard. the ultimatum hanging in the air. For months, her life had been defined by heartbreak and suspicion. Perhaps it was time to choose, rebuild or walk away. Neither option felt easy. "I'll think about it," she whispered, turning to leave. As she closed the nursery door, she caught a glimpse of Nicholas's reflection in the mirror, haunted, hopeful, terrified. She realized they were both standing on the brink of a decision that would shape the rest of their lives. In the following weeks, Serena wrestled with her decision. Every day brought a new wave of nostalgia, regret, anger, or longing. She turned to her closest friends, who offered a spectrum of advice from immediate divorce to cautious reconciliation. Clara, ever pragmatic, pointed out the potential complexities of custody and finances if they split. Adriana suggested a restorative trip away from the city. Eventually, Serena chose a middle path. She asked Nicholas if he would accompany her to a secluded property in the Hamptons, a cottage owned by her family, rarely used except for weekend getaways. It would be a chance to leave behind the noise of Manhattan, the prying eyes of society, and the ghosts of Ava's affair. Reluctantly, Nicholas agreed, though he worried Serena might use the trip as a final test. They arrived on a crisp autumn afternoon. The ocean breeze carried a tinge of salt, and the cottage stood on a cliffside overlooking the Atlantic. Inside, wooden beams and minimal decor offered a rustic warmth. For once, there were no urgent phone calls or business meetings. Just the two of them, and the unborn child between them. The first few days were awkward. They exchanged polite words, danced around deeper conversations, and slept in separate bedrooms. Yet something about the ocean's rhythm, the quiet hush of nature, began to soften their guard. One evening, Serena found Nicholas cooking a simple dinner. He had once been an inept cook, but after therapy, he'd taken up culinary lessons to manage stress. The aroma of freshly baked bread filled the cottage, reminding Serena of simpler, happier times. They sat at the table, candlelight dancing across their faces. Nicholas ventured a timid smile. "I hope it's not too salty." She tasted the food, nodded, offering a genuine smile in return. "It's actually good." That small exchange felt monumental. They slowly engaged in light banter, reminiscing about their first dates, the silly moments that once bonded them. Serena opened up about her fears for the baby, and Nicholas admitted he was terrified of being a failure as a father. A fragile understanding began to bloom. Over the next few days, they walked along the shoreline, collected seashells, and even laughed when the wind nearly carried away Serena's wide-brimmed hat. The weight of their shared past still existed, but they momentarily allowed themselves to envision a future beyond betrayal. One night, they sat on the deck, wrapped in blankets, watching the moonlit waves. Nicholas reached for Serena's hand, and for once she didn't recoil. "I still love you," he confessed softly. That never stopped. She swallowed, eyes brimming with tears. "I loved you too. Love you still, maybe. But I'm scared." "I know," he whispered, pulling her hand to his chest. "I'm scared too. But if we do this, if we try again, it'll be different, I promise." Serena's eyes drifted to the horizon, where moonlight sparkled on the water like liquid silver. Could she trust that promise? Did she have the courage to believe in their love once more? She didn't answer, but she didn't pull her hand away either. And for now, that was enough. After a week in the Hamptons, Serena and Nicholas returned to Manhattan, their bond tentatively strengthened, but still fragile. Over the next month, they immersed themselves in more intensive counseling. Nicholas openly confronted his deep-rooted insecurities. Serena voiced her lingering doubts and anger. The therapist guided them to build new foundations of trust, transparency with finances, location sharing when traveling, and honest conversations about fears. Bit by bit, they found a rhythm. Serena gradually allowed Nicholas to help prepare the nursery. He attended her doctor appointments more regularly, asking questions and expressing genuine excitement about fatherhood. They scheduled a baby moon in upstate New York, a short, quiet retreat where Nicholas doted on Serena, massaging her swollen feet and ensuring she got enough rest. Throughout this journey, the specter of Ava receded, thanks to the ironclad NDA and hush money. Occasionally, Serena worried about a potential re-emergence, but the crisis management team assured her they had tabs on Ava. All appeared quiet on that front. On a crisp winter morning, Serena went into labor a few weeks earlier than expected. Nicholas rushed her to the hospital, heart pounding. Their families converged in the waiting area, offering prayers and well wishes. After hours of labor, Serena gave birth to a healthy baby girl named Eliana, a name meaning God has answered in Hebrew, reflecting the tumultuous path they'd endured. Holding Eliana in her arms, Serena felt an indescribable wave of love. Nicholas stood beside her, tears streaming down his face, softly stroking Eliana's tiny hand. In that moment, the betrayals, the heartbreak, the hush money, everything else seemed to fade. There was only this beautiful child, the living embodiment of hope and new beginnings. As Serena gazed at Nicholas cradling their daughter, she felt a cautious optimism take root. Their marriage might never be the same as it was before the affair, but it could evolve into something else, maybe stronger, maybe more honest, forged by fire and tears. The road ahead would be challenging, but they weren't the same people they were months ago. They were scarred, yet perhaps those scars would remind them of the lessons learned. A few days later, they brought Eliana home to the penthouse. Nicholas carried her over the threshold, while Serena followed, feeling both exhilarated and nervous. The nursery, once a battleground of shattered hopes, now radiated warmth as they placed Eliana in her crib. The pastel walls bathed in soft lamplight. Nicholas wrapped an arm around Serena. "Welcome home, little family," he murmured. She leaned into him, her heart tender. For all they'd lost, they'd also gained something extraordinary, a reason to fight for a life free from lies and deception. In the hush of the penthouse, they listened to Eliana's gentle breathing, a lullaby for two souls still healing. And so their next chapter began, not a perfect fairy tale, but a story of redemption, resilience, and the unbreakable bond of family. Only time would reveal the full tapestry of their life together, woven from threads of both betrayal and love. In the end, Nicholas and Serena's story is not just about betrayal, it's about facing harsh truths, finding unexpected strength, and forging a path forward after deceit threatens to tear everything apart. Though they crossed a minefield of secrets and heartbreak, they emerged with a hard-won clarity about what truly matters: family, honesty, and the willingness to confront one's demons head-on. If their journey resonates with you, if you've ever felt the sting of lies or found yourself at a crossroads, remember that healing is possible, though it's rarely easy. Sometimes love can be rekindled, other times walking away is the truest form of liberation. Ultimately, every heart must decide for itself. Thank you for joining us on this emotional roller coaster. If you found hope, catharsis, or simple entertainment in this story, please like, share, and subscribe to stay connected with more powerful tales. Your support keeps these stories alive.
A gasp rippled through the gilded ballroom of the St. Regis Hanoi. All eyes were on the woman in crimson. Her hand still raised, her face a mask of triumph. Before her, the gentle, pregnant wife of billionaire mogul Marcus Thorne stumbled. A hand protectively clutching her swollen belly, the imprint of a slap blooming on her cheek. The city's elite watched breathless as the mistress, bold and unrepentant, declared her victory. But the real drama wasn't the public humiliation or the shattered illusion of a perfect marriage. The true bombshell was nestled deep inside the womb, a secret waiting to be revealed not by words, but by the frantic telling rhythm of a tiny unborn heart. Isabella Thorne believed her life was a fairy tale. At 26, she was the wife of Marcus Thorne, a man whose name was synonymous with power in Southeast Asia's tech scene. Their love story was the stuff of legend, a whirlwind romance that saw a humble art curator marry into one of Hanoi's most influential families. Marcus was her everything charming, attentive, and fiercely protective. He had given her a life beyond her wildest dreams, a sprawling penthouse overlooking Westlake, a wardrobe filled with bespoke creations from designers like Kong Tri, and a love that felt as solid as the ancient stones of the nearby Temple of Literature. Now 6 months pregnant with their first child, a son, Isabella felt her world was complete. The nursery was a symphony of soft blues and creams, filled with handcrafted toys and imported furniture. Marcus had been ecstatic hosting lavish dinners to announce the heir to the Thorne Empire. He would often rest his hand on her belly, his eyes alight with a joy that seemed to mirror her own. "Our legacy, my love." He'd whisper, his voice thick with emotion. "Everything I do for you and for him." But lately, hairline cracks had begun to appear in the flawless facade of their life. Marcus was working later, his phone calls becoming more frequent and hushed. He'd attribute it to a new acquisition, a hostile takeover that required his undivided attention. Isabella, trusting and devoted, accepted his explanations. She'd wait for him, the chef-prepared meals growing cold on the polished mahogany table, her own reflection in the panoramic windows, her only company. The whispers started subtly, a shadow of a rumor caught in the clinking of champagne glasses at charity galas. A name, Camilla, was mentioned in hushed tones by women adorned in diamonds and envy. Isabella ignored them. The high society of Hanoi was a viper's nest of jealousy, and she, the ingenue who had captured its most eligible bachelor, was the prime target. Camilla, as Isabella would soon learn, was Camilla Tran, a ruthlessly ambitious socialite and a former flame of Marcus's from his university days. While Isabella exuded a quiet, cultured grace, Camilla was a firestorm. Her laughter was loud, her dresses were daring, and her ambition was an open secret. She had recently returned to Hanoi after a stint in Singapore, and her re-entry into their circle was as subtle as a lightning strike. The first time Isabella felt a genuine pang of unease was at the annual Vietnam Innovators Gala, held at the opulent St. Regis, Hanoi. Marcus, who was receiving the top award, was uncharacteristically distracted all evening. His eyes kept flitting towards the entrance, his grip on her hand just a fraction too tight. And then Camilla had arrived. She wore a crimson dress that clung to her like a second skin, a stark, audacious slash of color in a sea of elegant pastels and classic blacks. She moved through the crowd with the predatory grace of a panther, her gaze locking onto Marcus across the ballroom. Isabella saw the flicker of something in her husband's eyes, not just recognition, but something deeper, more complicated. A ghost of a memory, a shared history that excluded her. Throughout the night she watched as Camilla artfully cornered Marcus, her hand lingering on his arm, her laughter echoing a little too loudly in their conversations. Marcus, for his part, seemed flustered, a state so alien to his usual composed demeanor that it set Isabella's nerves on edge. "She's just an old friend, darling," he had reassured her later that night, his voice smooth as silk. A bit intense, but harmless. He had pulled her into his arms, his lips finding hers, and for a moment the warmth of his embrace melted her fears. She wanted to believe him. To doubt Marcus was to doubt the very foundation of her world. But the seeds of doubt had been planted. A week later, a receipt for a lavish bouquet of black roses, a flower Isabella detested but knew was Camilla's favorite, fell out of his briefcase. He'd brushed it off as a corporate gift. Then there was the late-night text that buzzed on his phone, a simple thinking of you from a number he quickly deleted. The excuses became more elaborate, the distance between them growing from a hairline crack to a chasm. Isabella felt a profound and suffocating loneliness. The sprawling penthouse, once a symbol of her fairy tale life, now felt like a gilded cage. Her friends, mostly wives of Marcus's business associates, offered sympathetic but ultimately hollow words. They were part of this world, they understood its unspoken rules, the silent accommodations, the turning of a blind eye. But Isabella's heart, pure and perhaps a little naive, couldn't accept that. Love to her was not a transaction or an arrangement. It was a sacred, all-consuming truth. The pregnancy, once her greatest joy, now became a source of anxiety. She felt a desperate need to protect her unborn son, not just from the world, but from the encroaching shadows in her own home. She tried to talk to Marcus to break through the wall he was meticulously building around himself. "Is everything all right, Marcus?" she asked one evening, her hand on his arm, as he stared out at the city lights. "You seem so far away." He turned his face a carefully constructed mask of affection. "Just stress, my love. This deal is draining. Once it's over, it'll be just the three of us. I promise." He tilted her chin up and kissed her, a perfunctory gesture that no longer reached his eyes. Isabella knew with a certainty that chilled her to the bone that he was lying. The deal wasn't about business. The hostile takeover was happening right under her roof, and the enemy was not a rival corporation, but a woman in a crimson dress who smelled of black roses and broken promises. The fairy tale was over. Isabella was trapped, pregnant, and alone, standing on the precipice of a devastating truth, with no idea just how brutal the revelation would be. The breaking point arrived with an embossed cream-colored invitation. The Thorn Corporation was celebrating its 50th anniversary with a grand ball. It was to be the social event of the season, a testament to the family's enduring legacy and power. For Isabella, it felt less like a celebration and more like a stage for the final act of her disintegrating marriage. In the weeks leading up to the event, Marcus was a whirlwind of activity, but his focus was sharp, his mood almost buoyant. He presented Isabella with a stunning midnight blue gown by a Parisian couturier and a sapphire necklace that mirrored the depths of West Lake. "You will be the most beautiful woman there," he said, his voice brimming with a sincerity she hadn't heard in months. "The mother of my son, the queen of my heart." For a fleeting, hopeful moment, Isabella allowed herself to believe him. Perhaps the affair, the whispers, the lies, had been a fleeting madness. Perhaps this night was his way of reaffirming their bond, of showing the world, and her, that she was the one who truly mattered. She pushed her anxieties down, focusing on the baby's gentle kicks, a secret language of reassurance between mother and child. The night of the ball, the ballroom of the St. Regis Hanoi, was transformed into an enchanted forest from a Vietnamese folk tale. Thousands of orchids cascaded from the ceilings, and the air was thick with the scent of jasmine and the low hum of high-powered conversations. Isabella, on Marcus's arm, was a vision of serene elegance. The deep blue of her gown complemented her pregnancy, and the thorn sapphires at her throat glittered with every turn of her head. She smiled. She mingled. She played the part of the perfect billionaire's wife, all while a cold knot of dread tightened in her stomach. She knew Camilla would be there. It was inevitable. And sure enough, she saw her holding court by the champagne fountain, not in her usual audacious red, but in a startlingly white, almost bridal gown. The dress was a deliberate, provocative choice, an open challenge. Camilla's eyes found Isabella's across the room, and she offered a slow, deliberate smile that was anything but friendly. Marcus stiffened beside her. "Ignore her," he murmured, his grip on her elbow becoming possessive. "Tonight is about us." But Camilla had no intention of being ignored. As the night wore on, she seemed to be everywhere Isabella was. If Isabella moved to the terrace for a breath of fresh air, Camilla would appear moments later, her laughter sharp and piercing. If Isabella paused to speak with an acquaintance, Camilla would glide past her perfume, the cloying scent of black roses leaving a toxic trail. It was a calculated campaign of psychological warfare, and it was working. Isabella's composure began to fray. The climax came just after the main speeches. Marcus had just delivered a moving tribute to his family and the future of his company, concluding with a toast to my beautiful wife Isabella and our son, who will one day lead this legacy. The room erupted in applause. Beaming Marcus turned to kiss her, a public display of affection designed to cement their image as the perfect couple. It was in that moment of manufactured bliss that Camilla made her move. She strode towards their central table, her white dress parting the sea of guests like the prow of a ship. There was no hesitation in her steps, no doubt in her eyes. The murmuring of the crowd died down as she approached a collective intake of breath, creating a vacuum of silence in the grand ballroom. She stopped directly in front of Isabella, who was still seated. Marcus, caught off guard, stood halfway, his smile frozen on his face. "Legacy." Camilla's voice was clear and cold, slicing through the silence. "Your son." She laughed, a short, sharp, ugly sound. "Marcus, you are a wonderful storyteller, but you seem to have forgotten the main character." She turned her venomous gaze on Isabella. "You poor, pathetic little thing. Did you really believe all of it? The love story. The happy family." Isabella, stunned into silence, could only stare up at her. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. "What are you talking about?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "What am I talking about?" Camilla's voice rose, theatrical and cruel. "I'm talking about the fact that the child you are carrying is not the only thorn heir. I'm talking about the fact that Marcus has been with me in my bed every night he told you he was working late." Gasps rippled through the room. People were now openly staring, their phones discreetly raised to capture the unfolding drama. Marcus finally found his voice. "Camilla, that's enough. You're making a scene." "I'm making a scene," she shrieked, her composure finally cracking to reveal the raw fury beneath. "You're the one who has been living a lie. You promised me, Marcus. You promised you would leave her." She then looked back at Isabella, her eyes filled with a terrifying mix of pity and contempt. "He was never going to leave me." This, she gestured at Isabella's belly, was just a little complication, an air for the public. But his heart, his passion, that belongs to me. Isabella felt the world tilt on its axis. The faces of the guests blurred into a grotesque gallery of gawking masks. She looked at Marcus silently, pleading with him to deny it, to say something to defend her. But he stood there, his face pale, his eyes darting between the two women, a trapped animal. His silence was the only confession she needed. Tears welled in Isabella's eyes, hot and shameful. She felt a protective instinct surge through her, a primal need to shield her son from this ugliness. She tried to stand to escape the suffocating scrutiny. "Please, stop," she managed to say. But Camilla was not finished. She saw the tears, the vulnerability, and she went in for the kill. "You think you've won? You think this baby solidifies your position? You are nothing but an incubator, a vessel." And then, with a movement so swift it seemed to surprise even herself, Camilla leaned forward and swung her arm. Crack! The sound was sharp and shockingly loud in the silent room. Isabella's head snapped to the side, the force of the blow sending a jolt through her entire body. A collective, horrified gasp erupted from the onlookers. For a moment, there was only the stinging heat on her cheek and the stunned realization of what had just happened. Camilla the Mistress had slapped the pregnant wife of Marcus Thorne in front of everyone. Isabella stumbled back, her hand flying to her cheek, but her other arm wrapped instinctively, desperately around her stomach. The humiliation was a physical blow, a crushing weight that stole the air from her lungs. She looked at the faces around her. The shock, the pity, the morbid curiosity. She looked at Marcus, whose face was a canvas of horror and indecision. And then she looked at Camilla, who stood there, her chest heaving, her hand still tingling, a triumphant, hateful glare in her eyes. The fairy tale had not just ended. It had been violently, publicly, and irrevocably shattered, and as a sharp, cramping pain shot through her abdomen, Isabella realized the slap was not the most painful blow she would receive that night. The real agony was just beginning. The slap echoed in the cavernous ballroom, a definitive, brutal end to the night's festivities. The immediate aftermath was a chaotic tableau of shock and confusion. For a heartbeat, everyone, including Marcus, seemed frozen. Then the world lurched back into motion. Isabella, her mind reeling from the dual assault of humiliation and physical pain, felt her knees buckle. The sharp cramp in her lower abdomen intensified, radiating outwards in a wave of pure agony. A small, involuntary pruos escaped her lips. "My baby," she whispered, her voice choked with terror. Her protective instinct overrode everything else. The shame, the anger, the betrayal. All that mattered was the tiny, precious life inside her. It was not her husband who caught her. It was his father, Arthur Thorne, the family patriarch, who had been watching from a nearby table with an expression of grim fury. He surged forward, his old but still powerful frame moving with surprising speed, catching Isabella's arm just as she was about to collapse. "Get her a chair! Someone call a doctor!" he bellowed, his voice accustomed to commanding boardrooms, cutting through the stunned murmurs of the crowd. Marcus finally snapped out of his paralysis. "Isabella." He rushed to her side, his face a mess of panic and guilt. "My God, are you all right?" He reached for her, but she flinched away. Her eyes filled with more pain than he had ever seen meeting his. In that single searing glance, he saw the complete and utter destruction of her trust in him. Camilla, meanwhile, seemed to realize the enormity of her actions. The triumphant fire in her eyes flickered, replaced by a flicker of panic. Assaulting anyone in this public manner was scandalous. Striking a pregnant woman was a cardinal sin, even in the morally flexible world of the super-rich. She took a half step back, her gaze darting towards the exits. She had intended to cause a scene to force Marcus's hand, but this was spiraling out of control. I didn't mean, she began, but her words were cut off by Arthur Thorne's glacial stare. You, he said, his voice low and lethally soft, will not move an inch. Security. Two imposing men in dark suits materialized at his side. Escort Miss Tran to a private room, and do not let her leave. Camilla's face paled. She opened her mouth to protest, but one look at the unyielding fury in Arthur's eyes silenced her. Without another word, the guards flanked her and guided her away, her white dress now looking less like a bridal gown and more like a shroud. All focus was now on Isabella. She was gasping her breaths, coming in shallow, ragged pants. The cramping was getting worse. "It hurts," she cried, clutching her belly as if she could physically hold her son in place. "Marcus, it hurts." Despite her flinching away, her fear-driven instinct was to call out to the man she still on some level saw as her protector. Marcus, his face ashen, knelt before her. "I'm here, Isabella. I'm so sorry. We'll get you to the hospital." He tried to take her hand, and this time she let him, her fingers gripping his with a desperate strength. The St. Regis staff, trained for any contingency, moved with quiet efficiency. A makeshift screen was erected around the table, affording the Thornes a sliver of privacy from the hundreds of prying eyes. A medic who was on standby for the event was at Isabella's side, in moments taking her pulse, his face grim. "Her blood pressure is dangerously high. She's cramping. We need to get her to a hospital immediately." "The FV hospital is the closest, with a top-tier maternity ward," the medic announced, referring to the well-regarded Franco-Vietnamese hospital in Ho Chi Minh City, which had a prestigious branch in Hanoi. The logistics of the escape were a blur to Isabella. She was vaguely aware of being transferred to a wheelchair, of being wheeled through service corridors and down a private elevator away from the whispers and the stares. The journey was a torment of pain and fear. Every bump in the road sent a fresh wave of agony through her. She kept her eyes squeezed shut, her hand never leaving her belly, whispering her son's name, a mantra against the encroaching darkness. Marcus sat beside her in the back of his Maybach, a silent, tormented figure. The mask of the powerful CEO was gone, replaced by the raw fear of a man watching his world crumble due to his own weakness. He kept murmuring apologies, a litany of, "I'm sorry, Isabella. I never wanted this. Please be okay." Isabella didn't respond. His words were meaningless static, the buzzing of a fly in a hurricane. The man whose promises had built her world had just stood by and watched it be demolished. His apologies were not for her. They were for himself. They were the desperate pleas of a guilty man, trying to absolve himself, and she had no comfort to offer him. She felt a terrifying wetness between her legs, and a fresh surge of panic rose in her throat. "Something's wrong," she gasped, her eyes flying open and locking with his. "Marcus, something is wrong with the baby." The terror in her voice finally seemed to penetrate his self-pity. He barked at his driver. "Faster. For God's sake, drive faster." As the limousine sped through the glittering, indifferent streets of Hanoi, leaving the scene of her humiliation far behind, Isabella felt a strange and chilling calm settle over her. The physical pain was immense, but it was the emotional agony that was truly defining. The slap had been a catalyst, a violent act that had shattered the gilded cage. But what echoed in its wake was not just the sound of a hand hitting skin, but the deafening silence of her husband's betrayal. It was the echo of a lie she had been living, a lie that was now threatening to cost her the only thing that mattered. She was no longer just fighting for her marriage or her dignity. She was fighting for her son's life. The emergency entrance of the FV hospital was a blur of harsh fluorescent lights and urgent controlled chaos. A team was waiting, alerted by Arthur Thorne's influential call. Isabella was swiftly transferred from the wheelchair to a gurney, the transition jarring her body and eliciting another cry of pain. Doctors and nurses swarmed around her, their voices a calm but urgent flurry of medical terminology. Pregnant, 26 weeks, presenting with severe abdominal cramping and signs of bleeding following a physical altercation. BP is 160/100. Tachycardic. Get her to the maternity ward, stat prep for an ultrasound. We need to check for placental abruption. Marcus was shunted to the side, rendered powerless and irrelevant by the medical professionals who now held his wife's and child's lives in their hands. He stood in the corridor, his tuxedo looking absurdly out of place, his hands stained with a small amount of Isabella's blood where he had tried to comfort her. He watched as they wheeled her away, her hand still protectively on her belly, her face pale and etched with fear. The doors swung shut behind her, leaving him alone with the crushing weight of his guilt. Inside the examination room, the atmosphere was tense. Isabella was gently helped into a hospital gown, her beautiful midnight blue dress unceremoniously cut away. The pain was a constant, terrifying rhythm. A kind-faced, middle-aged female doctor, Dr. Lien, introduced herself as the head of obstetrics. Isabella. My name is Dr. Lien. We're going to take very good care of you and your baby, she said, her voice a beacon of calm in the storm. We need to do an ultrasound to see what's happening. I need you to try and stay as still as possible. Isabella nodded, tears streaming silently down her temples. Is my baby going to be okay? We're doing everything we can to ensure that Dr. Lien said, her reassuring tone never wavering, though her eyes betrayed the seriousness of the situation. Let's have a look. The room fell silent as the ultrasound technician applied the cold gel to Isabella's stomach. All that could be heard was the soft whirring of the machine and Isabella's ragged breathing. She stared at the monitor, her heart pounding in her ears, praying for a sign, for a flicker of hope. The technician moved the transducer across her abdomen, the grey and black images swirling on the screen. Dr. Lien's eyes were narrowed in concentration, her brow furrowed. Marcus, who had finally been allowed in, after an agonizing wait, stood in the corner, looking on helplessly. There's the baby, Dr. Lien said softly. He's small, but he's a fighter. Isabella let out a choked sob of relief. He was alive. But I am seeing some cause for concern. The doctor continued, her tone becoming more clinical. There appears to be a small subchorionic hematoma, likely caused by the trauma and the spike in your blood pressure. It's a bleed. That's what's causing the pain and the spotting. We need to monitor it very closely. But he'll be okay. Marcus's voice was hoarse from the sidelines. Dr. Lien didn't look at him. Her focus was entirely on her patient. The immediate danger is preterm labor. The stress and physical shock could trigger contractions. We're going to give you medication to stop them, and a steroid shot to help the baby's lungs develop, just in case. As she spoke, the technician adjusted a setting on the machine, and a new sound filled the room. Thump, 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 thump. It was the sound of the baby's heartbeat, amplified by the machine. It was fast, a frantic, galloping rhythm, but it was strong. It was the most beautiful sound Isabella had ever heard. Tears of relief streamed down her face. It was the sound of life, of hope. Dr. Leon smiled for the first time. A strong heartbeat. That's a very good sign. A little fast, he's clearly stressed, but strong. Marcus stepped forward, a wave of relief washing over his face. Thank God, he breathed. The technician continued her work, taking measurements, capturing stills of the tiny profile, the little fists. Dr. Lien was explaining the course of treatment, complete bed rest, constant monitoring, when the technician suddenly paused. She zoomed in on one particular area of the screen, her own brow furrowing in a way that had nothing to do with the hematoma. "Doctor," she said quietly, pointing to the screen. "Could you look at this?" Dr. Lyon leaned in, her professional gaze sweeping over the area the technician indicated. The room fell silent again, the baby's amplified heartbeat the only sound. For a long moment, Dr. Lyon said nothing. She simply stared at the image, her expression shifting from professional concern to one of utter bewilderment. "What is it?" Isabella asked, a fresh spike of fear piercing her relief. "Is something else wrong?" Dr. Leon turned from the monitor and looked at Isabella, then at Marcus, and then back to Isabella. Her face was a complex mask of confusion and something else, something that looked like disbelief. "Run the Doppler again," she instructed the technician. "Amplify it." The technician complied. The thump-thump sound filled the room once more. But this time the technician moved the transducer just a few centimeters, and then another sound joined the first. Thump-thump, 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 thump-thump. It was a second heartbeat. Distinct, separate, yet beating in an almost identical, frantic rhythm. It was unmistakable. The room, which had been filled with one frantic heartbeat, was now filled with the sound of two. Isabella stared at the screen, then at the doctor, her mind unable to process the sound. "What is that?" Marcus stepped closer to the screen, his eyes wide with confusion. "Is that an echo? What's wrong with the machine?" Dr. Lyon slowly shook her head, her eyes still locked on the monitor, where two tiny, flickering forms were now visible. She looked up at Isabella, her voice barely a whisper. "Mr. Thorne, there is nothing wrong with the machine." She took a deep breath, as if steeling herself to announce something utterly impossible. "Isabella, you're not carrying one baby." She pointed a trembling finger at the screen, at the two distinct sacs, at the two tiny, flickering hearts, beating in terrified unison. "You're having twins." The revelation hung in the air, a fact so stunning, so completely unexpected, that it defied all logic. All the previous scans conducted by a top society doctor, chosen by Marcus, had shown only one baby. One boy. The heir. Marcus had been there every time, beaming as he looked at the grainy image of his son. A wave of dizziness washed over Isabella. Twins. How was that possible? They had done scans at 8 weeks, 12 weeks, and the detailed anatomy scan at 20 weeks. All had shown one baby, a single, healthy boy. Then a darker, more insidious thought began to form in the recesses of her mind, born from the night's catastrophic betrayals. She looked at Marcus, whose face was not filled with the joy of an unexpected blessing, but with a ghostly pallor of pure, unadulterated shock. His expression was not one of confusion. It was the look of a man whose carefully constructed lie had just been blown apart by the most undeniable, most irrefutable truth of all. The society doctor, the man he had chosen, the insistence on it being a boy, the unwavering certainty. But all the other scans, she began, her voice trembling as the horrifying implication began to dawn on her. Dr. Pham always said, he said it was just one. Marcus couldn't meet her gaze. He stared at the screen at the 2 heartbeats that had just exposed him, his mind clearly racing, searching for an escape that didn't exist. And in that moment, Isabella understood. The slap, the affair, the public humiliation that was just the prelude. This was the true betrayal. It wasn't just a simple case of infidelity. It was a deception so profound, so calculated, that it had targeted the most sacred space in her life, her own body, her own children. Dr. Lyon, sensing the monumental shift in the room, spoke gently. Sometimes a twin can be hidden, tucked behind the other, especially if the sonographer isn't specifically looking. But at 26 weeks, it's unusual to miss. Very unusual. Her carefully chosen words hung in the air, a quiet indictment. The 2 heartbeats continued their frantic rhythmic drumming, a sound that was no longer just a sign of life, but a declaration of war. They were the beat of a truth that could not be silenced, a truth that revealed that Marcus Thorne had not just lied about his mistress. He had lied about the very nature of the legacy he claimed to cherish. Isabella was not just carrying his heir. She was carrying a secret he had desperately, and for reasons she couldn't yet fathom, tried to conceal. And now, thanks to the violent act of his mistress, that secret was out. Everything had changed. The revelation of the 2nd heartbeat did not bring joy. It detonated in the sterile hospital room like a silent, devastating bomb, obliterating the last vestiges of Isabella's shattered reality. The sound of the 2 tiny hearts beating in unison was a testament not to a miracle, but to a monstrous, calculated deception. Isabella lay on the hospital bed, the doctor's words echoing in her ears. "You're having twins." She looked at Marcus, truly looked at him for the first time since the news broke. The panic on his face was undeniable, but it was laced with something else, the cold, hard glint of a man cornered. It was the look of a king whose carefully constructed kingdom had just been set ablaze. You knew, she whispered, her voice devoid of tears, stripped bare to a chilling monotone. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact, a verdict. You knew, and you lied. Marcus flinched, as if she had slapped him. "Isabella, no, how could I have known? It's a surprise, a blessing." His attempt at feigned delight was pathetic, a transparently false performance that was an insult to her intelligence. "A blessing." Her voice rose, laced with a hysterical edge. "You stood there at every appointment with Dr. Pham, your hand-picked physician, looking at the screen and telling me about our son, the Thorne heir. Was he in on it too? Did you pay him to lie, to erase one of our children from existence?" The accusation hung in the air, ugly and undeniable. Dr. Lyon and the technician suddenly became very busy averting their eyes, offering the illusion of privacy, where none existed. "That's a crazy accusation," Marcus stammered, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair, messing it for the first time all night. "Why would I do that? Why would I hide one of my own children? I don't know." Isabella's voice cracked, the raw pain finally breaking through her shock. Maybe one was a boy, and one was a girl, and you only wanted the boy. Maybe you have some sick, twisted reason. I can't even begin to imagine. But you knew. Your shock wasn't surprise, Marcus. It was the terror of being caught. The two heartbeats still thumping steadily from the monitor served as a relentless, rhythmic jury. Thump, thump. Thump, thump. Guilty. Guilty. Before Marcus could formulate another lie, the door opened and his father, Arthur Thorne, swept in. The patriarch's face was a thundercloud of controlled rage. He had clearly been briefed. He took in the scene. Isabella pale and trembling with fury on the bed, Marcus cornered and sweating, the damning image still frozen on the ultrasound screen. Arthur's gaze fell on his son, and the disappointment in his eyes was so profound, it was almost a physical force. I have just had a very enlightening conversation with the hospital administrator, he said, his voice dangerously calm. And I took the liberty of placing a call to your Dr. Pham. A very nervous man, Dr. Pham. It seems his records from your last scan have been misplaced. Marcus visibly paled. The unspoken threat was clear. The Thorne family's reach was long, and a doctor who participated in such a fraud would have his career destroyed. Father, this is a misunderstanding. Marcus began, his voice pleading. Silence, Arthur commanded, and Marcus, for all his billions and his power, obeyed like a chastened child. Arthur walked to Isabella's bedside. His expression softened as he looked at her, a flicker of genuine compassion in his hardened eyes. Isabella, he said gently, I am profoundly sorry for the humiliation you suffered tonight, and for this unforgivable deception. Whatever my son has done, the Thorne family will not abandon you or your children. He glanced at the monitor, a flicker of wonder crossing his face at the sight of the two distinct forms, two potential heirs. He then turned his full attention back to Marcus, his voice dropping to a low growl. You will tell me why. You will tell me why you would deny your own blood. Now. Trapped between his furious father and his devastated wife, Marcus finally broke. The lies, the bravado, the carefully maintained facade, it all crumbled. He slumped into the chair in the corner, his head in his hands. It was complicated, he mumbled. Complicated does not suffice when you are lying to your wife about the existence of your child, Arthur thundered. Marcus looked up, his face a mask of desperation. It was Camilla, he said, his voice barely a whisper. She's pregnant too. The air was sucked out of the room. Isabella felt a fresh wave of nausea, so intense she thought she would be sick. It was a betrayal on a scale she could never have conceived. I found out a few months ago Marcus continued the confession, tumbling out of him in a torrent of self-pitying misery. She claimed it was mine. She threatened to go public to ruin everything. The anniversary, the launch of the new subsidiary. The timing was a disaster. She wanted me to leave you to marry her. She was obsessed. And your solution was to lie to everyone, Arthur demanded. I was buying time. Marcus insisted, standing up, pacing like a caged animal. I didn't know if her baby was even mine. I told her I'd handle it. My plan, my stupid, idiotic plan, was to secure the legitimate heir. Our son. He looked at Isabella. I needed to establish his primacy. A single male heir. It was clean, powerful. It would cement our family line and make Camilla's claim if she made it seem like a desperate, pathetic ploy from a scorned mistress. The chilling logic of his plan began to dawn on Isabella. And a second baby, a twin. Complicated, that she said, her voice hollow. It muddied the waters, he exclaimed, almost angry that she was making him admit it. 2 babies. It made it seem messy, less definitive. And what if one was a girl? It would weaken my position. I told Pham to just focus on the boy, to omit the other one from the official reports, just for a little while. I was going to reveal the surprise twin later after Camilla's situation was neutralized. I swear it, Isabella. I would never have denied our child forever. It was a temporary strategic deception. A strategic deception. Isabella repeated the words, tasting their poison. You erased our child from our lives for strategy. You made me believe I was only carrying one baby, grieving a loss. I didn't even know I had all to manage your sordid affair. The sheer cold-blooded calculus of it was breathtaking. He had weighed his children on a scale of public relations and corporate strategy and found one of them wanting. He hadn't just cheated on her. He had played God with their unborn children. Arthur Thorne looked at his son with utter contempt. You are a fool, Marcus. A weak, short-sighted fool. You have taken a crisis and turned it into a cataclysm. You have dishonored your wife, your name, and your own unborn children, all to appease a venomous viper you were too weak to discard. He turned back to Isabella, his decision made. Isabella, you will want for nothing. The full resources of the Thorne family are at your disposal. You and your children will be protected. As for you, Marcus, he said, his voice dropping to absolute zero. You are relieved of all your duties at Thorne Corporation, effective immediately. Your assets are frozen. You will go to the country house, and you will not leave until I summon you. You have made your bed of lies. Now you will lie in it. Alone. The verdict was absolute. In the space of a few hours, Marcus Thorne had gone from the king of Hanoi's business world to a dethroned, disgraced exile. He stared at his father, then at his wife, his mouth opening and closing with no sound coming out. There was nothing left to say. His lies had unraveled, and in doing so had unraveled him completely. Isabella watched him, feeling not a shred of pity, only a vast, empty coldness where her love used to be. The man she had married was a stranger, a moral void hidden behind a handsome face and a charming smile. The trauma of the night, the slap the terror had forged something new inside her. The meek, trusting art curator was gone. In her place was a mother of 2, a woman who had been pushed to the absolute limit and had found not an abyss but a core of steel. The 2 heartbeats on the monitor continued their steady, strong rhythm. They were the only truth left in the room. They were her truth. And she would protect them and herself with a ferocity that Marcus and his mistress could not possibly comprehend. The war was just beginning. The week that followed was a cocoon of enforced tranquility and simmering rage. Isabella remained at the FV hospital, not just for medical reasons, but for sanctuary. Her suite was transformed into a command center, a fortress from which she would plan her counter-offensive. The hematoma was stable, the risk of preterm labor had subsided, and the 2 tiny heartbeats that had upended her world grew stronger each day. They were her fuel, her purpose. Arthur Thorne was true to his word. He visited daily, not with the overbearing authority of a patriarch, but with the quiet deference of an ally. He saw in Isabella not a fragile victim, but the future matriarch of his legacy, the guardian of not 1 but 2 of his grandchildren. He provided her with the best legal team in Vietnam, a group of sharp, merciless lawyers who specialized in high-stakes divorces. Spare no expense, Arthur had told them in Isabella's presence. I want this handled with the subtlety of a guillotine, clean, final, and entirely in Ms. Isabella's favour. Marcus was gone, banished to a remote Thorn estate in the highlands of Dalat. His name was scrubbed from the corporate website his office cleared out. The official story, meticulously crafted by Arthur's PR team, was that Marcus had stepped down for personal health reasons to focus on his family during a difficult pregnancy. The story was just plausible enough to quell the rampant speculation. But the real story, the one whispered in the boardrooms and elite social circles, was that the king had been ruthlessly deposed. Camilla Tran was also dealt with. Arthur's investigators had worked with surgical precision. They uncovered her own web of debts and deceit. The pregnancy, she claimed, it was real. But a discreetly obtained DNA test from a coffee cup she'd used at a cafe proved what Arthur had suspected: the baby wasn't Marcus's. It belonged to a married Singaporean businessman she had been seeing concurrently. Armed with this proof, Arthur's lawyers presented her with a simple, non-negotiable choice: disappear quietly with a modest one-time settlement and a signed NDA, or face public exposure fraud charges and the unmitigated wrath of the Thorn family. Camilla, a pragmatist above all else, took the deal and vanished from the Hanoi social scene as quickly as she had appeared. But for Isabella, these victories were peripheral. Her focus was singular. It wasn't about revenge on Camilla, or even about punishing Marcus anymore. It was about reclaiming her narrative and securing an unassailable future for her children. During her days in the hospital, she began to change. The soft, deferential woman who had once organized art exhibitions was replaced by a shrewd, calculating strategist. She devoured the financial reports her lawyers brought her, learning about trust funds, share allocations, and corporate governance. She had once loved Marcus for his charm and ambition. Now she studied the architecture of the empire he had built, not with admiration, but with the critical eye of a conqueror. Her gambit, when she finally revealed it to her lawyers and a stunned but impressed Arthur Thorn, was audacious. "I don't want a simple divorce settlement," she announced one afternoon, her voice clear and steady. The hospital suite was bathed in the soft afternoon light, and she was propped up in bed, surrounded by financial documents, looking more like a CEO than a patient. "I don't want cash or property or alimony." Her lead lawyer, a formidable woman named Ms. Vi, raised an eyebrow. "Ms. Isabella, given the circumstances, the infidelity, the public assault, the staggering fraud regarding the children, you are entitled to one of the largest settlements in this country's history." "A settlement makes me a pensioner of the Thorn family," Isabella stated calmly. "It makes me a wealthy victim. I have no interest in being a victim." She looked directly at Arthur. "Marcus's shares in Thorn Corporation, his voting rights, his seat on the board. I want them transferred to a trust that I control as the sole trustee for the benefit of my children." Arthur stared at her, his expression unreadable. Ms. Vi's jaw practically dropped. Isabella was not asking for a piece of the pie. She was demanding control of the bakery. "He will never agree to that," Ms. Vi said. "That's his identity, his life's work." "He will agree," Isabella said with chilling certainty. "Because the alternative is that I don't sign a non-disclosure agreement. The alternative is that I give a full exclusive interview to the Wall Street Journal. I will tell them everything about the affair, about the public assault by his mistress, and about the meticulous, medically assisted fraud he perpetrated to hide the existence of one of his own children for strategic gain." She let the threat hang in the air. It was mutually assured destruction. The scandal would not just destroy Marcus's reputation permanently. It would taint the Thorn Corporation name for a generation. It would cause shareholder panic, invite regulatory scrutiny, and become a legendary case study in corporate malfeasance and moral bankruptcy. I will detail how Dr. Pham was pressured to falsify medical records. She continued, her eyes locked on Arthur. I will explain that my husband's immediate reaction to discovering he was having twins was not joy, but terror at his lie being exposed. I will paint a picture of a man and a corporate culture so obsessed with a clean, powerful narrative of a single male heir that it was willing to deny a child's very existence. Arthur remained silent, his steepled fingers covering his mouth. He was a ruthless businessman, and he recognized the move for what it was, a brilliant, perfectly executed checkmate. Isabella had found his single greatest weakness, his obsession with the family legacy. She was using the sanctity of that legacy which Marcus had so carelessly desecrated as her ultimate weapon. She wasn't threatening to take his money. She was threatening to burn his kingdom to the ground. Finally, he spoke, a slow smile spreading across his face. It was a smile of pure, unadulterated respect. "He'll sign, Arthur," said, nodding to Miss Vi. "Draw up the papers." The meeting with Marcus was arranged a week later, after Isabella was discharged and settled into a new, secure penthouse, one chosen and paid for by her from an advance on the trust. The location was neutral, a private conference room at the Sofitel Legend Metropole, Hanoi, a place of old-world power. Isabella walked in, not as a victim, but as an equal. She was no longer pregnant and hiding behind flowing dresses. She had given birth 2 days prior to 2 small but healthy babies, a boy, Leo, and a girl, Luna. The birth had been premature but uncomplicated. Her body was tired, but her spirit was forged in iron. Marcus was already there, flanked by his own lawyer. He looked diminished, a ghost of his former self. The tailored suit hung loosely on his frame, and the arrogance in his eyes was gone, replaced by a weary resignation. He hadn't seen Isabella or his children since the night at the hospital. He stood when she entered. "Isabella, I heard about the babies. Are they—" "They are fine," she said, her voice cool and professional, cutting him off. She did not take the offered seat across from him, but remained standing, a silent assertion of power. "No thanks to you." She gestured for Ms. Vi to present the documents. Marcus's lawyer read through them, his eyes widening with each clause. He leaned over and whispered frantically to his client. Marcus just shook his head, a broken man. This is everything," he whispered, looking at Isabella. "My shares, my seat, my entire life." "You have a life," Isabella retorted, her voice sharp as glass. "You have one because I am choosing not to scorch the earth. I am choosing to protect the family name for the sake of my children. This is not a punishment, Marcus. It is a consequence. You proved you are not fit to be the steward of this legacy. So now I will be." She finally sat down, her gaze unwavering. "You will have supervised visitation rights. You will be provided with a generous allowance, enough to live comfortably, but not enough to cause trouble. You will, for all intents and purposes, retire from public life. In return, the world will remember you as the man who stepped down for his family. It's a better legacy than the one you were building. You should thank me." There was a long, heavy silence. Marcus looked at the documents, then at his ex-wife, the woman he had so grievously underestimated. He saw not the gentle girl he had married, but an empress in the making. He had created her, in a way. His betrayals had been the fire, and she had walked out of it, reborn, holding his entire world in her hands. With a trembling hand, Marcus Thorne, the deposed king, picked up the pen. He signed away his power, his company, and his future, all to the steady, silent rhythm of 2 tiny heartbeats he had once tried to erase. The Empress's gambit had succeeded, and so the story of the slap that shocked Hanoi's elite took its final stunning turn. It was never just about a mistress's fury or a husband's infidelity. It was about a deception that ran to the very heart of a family, and the quiet, unassuming wife who rose from the ashes of public humiliation to seize control of an empire. Isabella Thorne, once a footnote in her husband's story, became the author of her own, rewriting her destiny. Not with tears, but with shrewd intelligence and the unyielding power of a mother's love. She proved that the greatest strength is often forged in the deepest betrayal, and that sometimes the most powerful move is not to destroy your enemies, but to simply take everything they hold dear. What did you think of Isabella's ultimate power move? Was it justice or the most brilliant revenge? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you were captivated by this story of drama betrayal and ultimate empowerment, please give this video a like and share it with someone who loves a story where the Queen finally takes the throne. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next tale of secrets, lies, and stunning revelations. Thank you for watching.